Hey there, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video. I hope you guys are having a good day, and I hope you had a good weekend. I did. I had back-to-back birthday parties, and one of them was my oldest son. He turned 9 years old today. I can't believe it. It's been 9 years. So yeah, make sure if you feel like it, tell him happy birthday in the comments. I'm sure he would like that. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and talk about 90 Day Fiancé, The Other Way, Season 5, Episode 7, Tales from the Crypto. So, once again, I'm going to ask everybody to go and grab their tissues. We're going to start off with Kenny and Armando. So, Kenny's video calling his daughter Taylor. He tells her Mexico City is good, that Armando seems to be like more on board with it, but we'll see. And then she tells him she has some news, and she shows him an ultrasound, and he's going to be a grandpa again. And Kenny's so happy that he just bursts into tears. And then he's so funny. He says, "No wonder your boobies look big." And we needed that joke because every time I see these guys, I'm tearing up. She tells him that she's 7 weeks, and he's like, "Well, pregnancy agrees with you. You're glowing." And then he lets us know this is going to be his third grandbaby. He says he has four children and two grandchildren at the time. And seeing this sonogram just fills his heart with like so much love, but also sadness because it reminds him of like everything he's missing and that he's missing all these things with his kids. And then, they talk about that, how sad it is that he's missing out. And he just tells her, he wants to visit a lot. He wants to see her all fat and swollen. And they laugh. And she brings up, how's the thing going with them wanting to have a baby. And he tells her, that it's a back and forth issue. Armando, he really wants it. And he knows like they would be a good team and good parents. And Kenny loves having children. But he's like, there might be a point that you have to admit that you're just too old to keep doing it. She says it would be hard for his kids in the States to have a bond with the baby, being far away and all. But she's going to be happy if he is. And he just says, right now he doesn't think he wants to have a baby. She tells him, it's okay. And he has to do stuff for him. And Armando should just understand that. He says this is kind of where the age difference plays a big part in their relationship. Because Armando's still at the age where people are having children. And Kenny just isn't. And he just feels like he's walking a tightrope because he really just wants to make his husband happy. And this is just kind of one of those times he thinks maybe he's not the right person for him. And like, oh my gosh, you guys, he's crying. And it's just really hard for him to even say all of that. And this is why we needed the tissues, right? So later on, we circle back to them. And they're getting on a boat, and I think it's the same boat from their awesome little pictures with their names in the beginning. And they all get to the boat. And by all, I mean Kenny, Armando, his mom, and Hannah. He's excited to show his mom part of the country, like this part of the country and culture in Mexico. He says he didn't sleep well last night because of what happened at the coffee shop. That was like the biggest fight they've ever had. And they just haven't talked about it. They're on the riverboat ride and Hannah's so excited to see the roses and the bananas. And she just feels like she's in the forest. And the mama is smiling too. She thinks it's relaxing. She says, at first she was scared to be in Mexico City, but she's starting to get used to it and she likes it. So who knows, maybe the whole fam will move over there. They'll get a spin-off. To Mexico City we go, or something like that. So the mom is being, supportive because she realizes that she hasn't been. She doesn't say that, but I could tell. And she asks how it went at the clinic. Yikes. So Armando tells her it was good. They answered their questions. Sounds like it's an easy process. And then the mom is like, well, what did Kenny think? He's honest. He's like, he has mixed feelings because of his age. And he tells his mom that Kenny says, he finished having kids many years ago and his kids are grown. The mom says, yeah, they have a lot to talk about. Then Armando translates to Kenny, she said they need to come to agreement. But then he adds that she would like to have another grandbaby and Hannah to have a sibling. But she didn't say all that to Armando, or at least they surely didn't show us that. But, she knows it's their choice. Kenny says, he's back and forth in his head because they have both lost children, and that's what made him initially consider it. And I was like, wait, what? What? So Kenny tells us they bonded when they met on the gay father support group. And, Kenny had lost twins after 4 months with a miscarriage. And Armando lost a child as well, I guess. And he says, having a new baby might help heal those wounds and fulfill something that never took place before. Meanwhile, Hannah's like, yeah, I'm out of here. I don't need to hear this. She goes to the front of the boat to look at the water. He tells his mom that they were talking about how they both lost babies, and that's one of the reasons he didn't say anything from the beginning. Then Armando starts to cry. Someone please get this man into therapy because I think it would help him. He has a lot of pain that he just hasn't dealt with. And he's so positive through it all. He just keeps on keeping on, So his mom comes over and she hugs him and she kisses his cheek. And that's when Armando tells us that when Hannah's mom was 8 months pregnant, that's when she had the car accident and passed away. And he lost both of them. So over the years, he's wondered, who this child would be, how she would have been with Hannah. And, he said they were all ready for her birth. They had the name picked out. And, he's just saying there's no way of explaining the pain and the feeling. And, I believe him. I can't imagine. So he tells his mom and Kenny that sometimes he thinks if he had another baby, she could be reincarnated into another child and he could have her. Kenny tells us that seeing Armando get this emotional tears at his heart because he didn't realize that it still affected him that much. And he wants to make him happy. He wants Armando to fulfill all of his dreams. But there's a lot of reasons that he can't do this. And it's his age. What if he gets sick and he doesn't make it and then he isn't around for them? And he fears he's not going to be around for the child growing up. And that's not fair to a child. So at this point, Hannah makes her way back and asks what they're talking about. And Armando just says a little bit of everything. And that's really all we got from them this episode. It's really hard. I can't imagine. There were some tough subjects. I can't imagine all the things that Armando had to go through, just being gay and in the closet and having a family, and then just all the loss at the same time. So I hope they find a way through this and they can, stick it out. I'm sure they will. They're one of the strongest couples on this, franchise. So I'm really rooting for them. Next up, I want to talk about Kirsten and Julio. We didn't get a whole lot from them this week. We meet up with Kirsten and she says she's been home a couple weeks now, but things are still not great with Julio. They do FaceTime and talk every day, but it's just not how it used to be. We see that she's meeting up with her friend Yara, and she wants to get her opinion on the situation. They're besties. They've been friends since they were 5. They say it's been a little while since they caught up, but she's like, so yeah, you met his family. She tells her, yeah, she met his mom and his family, and the mom is sweet. And she's like, well, haven't you met her on FaceTime before? And Kirsten's like, no, never. No. Then that's when she tells her she found out that Julio never told them about her. He told his mom a week before she got there. No one knew he had plans to move. The friend just can't believe it. She's like, Julio's mom got real emotional at the table. And Yara is like, yeah, of course. It's not only a shock for her, but like a shock for you. And she's like, what a dick. Like, how could you keep that a secret? Just like any bestie would. And she's like, so now you're back, now what? Then we find out Kirsten says, this no good, dirty, rotten, pig stealing, lying, can't stand up for his decisions, little guy, said he isn't coming in January. And, that was the original plan. She's like, well, when did he decide this? Apparently, he talked to his mom. She doesn't want him to move at all. But, she's also saying that she still needs help with the house. And she told him, if he needs more time, like 6 months, that's fine. She gets that. But Julio's not even sure about 6 months. And honestly, I'm sure his mom is forever going to need help with the house and the bills. And the only way he's going to be able to be with someone is if she moves in with them and contributes to that. That's the vibes I'm getting. Kirsten is just flabbergasted. She feels stuck. Like she's just waiting. So that irritates her. The friend is like, yeah, he shouldn't have made these plans if he wasn't going to do it. And, she's like, so what are you going to do? She's like, I can't invest another year in this long distance relationship. But it's hard because she loves Julio and they have been together a year. Like, well, how about, like, don't invest in someone who lies to their family for 1 year and is a complete flip-flopper depending on who he is around? Maybe invest in someone who doesn't have those qualities and it'll work out better, The friend's like, yeah, but it's kind of now or never. So she asks her friend, like, oh, so you think I should give him an ultimatum, tell him it's a couple months or we're done? And yeah, that's exactly what the friend is saying. And I'm with the friend here. I usually agree with the friends. They have the best advice. They get the best scripts. So she tells us that she knows it's not an easy move and she's trying to be understanding, but she just can't wait for someone who may never show up. And I'm just thinking, what happened to that old pinky promise at the airport? Because apparently Julio didn't see the part in Trolls 2 when they said you could never break a pinky promise. Look what he did. 2 weeks in, broken. So, I'm not surprised. Is anyone else surprised? I just feel bad for Kirsten because I'm sure it'll be hard for her to let go. But I think it was pretty clear to everyone that he completely got cold feet and second thoughts, and his mom and his family just aren't going to let him go. They're going to keep at him every day until he says he's not moving. But he'll probably lie to her about it and tell them he's not moving. And then a week before she signs a lease on their new apartment, he'll think it's a good time to tell her. So that's where I see that going. Okay, let's take a trip to South Africa and hang out with Wayne and Holly. The couple gets into the car. I'm assuming they're going to look at the places Holly arranged to see. And Rapunzel is not playing. She has a list of things she wants in a house. She starts naming them off. Walk-in closet, security system. And Wayne's like, wait, what are you talking about? And she tells him it's a house list. She continues. She wants a place to go running at night. What is with the running at night? Like, someone get this girl a treadmill and one of those projector things that do all the stars across the room. She'll be fine. She tells us again, in South Africa, she's not going to feel 100% safe or comfortable unless she lives in a gated community. She says Wayne is resistant about looking for a place, so she decided to, book the appointment for them and see what's out there. She continues with her list. Swimming pool. And he's like, what do you think? We're living in a hotel? I mean, that's not too much to ask. Sounds like Danielle almost. So then she asks if they have AC there. And he's like, a place like that would be $3,000. And then she's like, you're acting like I'm the Queen of England with all these high demands. AC is a natural thing to want. Apparently it's not in South Africa, but I'm sure they would enjoy it if they could, right? So she's like, why are you in a bad mood? And, he's thinking about business. He says for him, time is money, and he's wasting time that he could be making money looking at houses. And, Holly doesn't know it, but he can't afford it. It's like, well, you wouldn't be wasting time if you were honest. So they get to the place. The guy is showing them all the things. The fence is electric. The dining area has granite tops. It has a gas stove. And they ask, how many break-ins they've had. And he says none. Holly asks how long this property has been there. And he says since 1990. So, Wayne, what happened to the gated communities are just as dangerous. So he shows them the bedroom. There's some kind of extra door for security at night. Holly likes the size of the room, and they spend some time trying to convert measurements. So we ended at the place is 63,309 feet, which is ridiculous. But we find out that it's actually 1,496 square feet. So thank you, TLC, for that one. And then it has a nice little pool and a cute backyard with these brick walls. And they have a seat in the backyard and ask more questions. Holly is ready. The realtor asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you like it? She says the security is great. She thinks it's good for the price, too. I don't know that she knows a lot about the price. She says, she doesn't know now because she wants to look at more places. So the realtor is like, okay, well, let me know your budget. Wayne's sitting there sweating. She answers like she knows, right? And she's like, 400,000. And he's like, you mean million? She's like, yeah, sorry, 4 million. Million. She shouldn't be answering these things. She doesn't even know the math or how to convert anything. So Wayne's sitting there like a deer in the headlights. And she's like, right, Wayne? And he tells her, what are you talking about, 4 million? That's crazy. She's like, well, it's not 500,000. She says that it's not that much money in the U.S. And he's like, well, you're not there anymore. You're in South Africa. Apparently, she tells him she's still on USA time. So she wants to know his max price. And he's like, I wasn't even planning on buying a house until you made an appointment. Finally, the realtor had gotten enough tea from these two and is like, well, I'm going to go now. And he gives them some space. She asks him what he thinks. He tells her he can't afford it now because business has not been booming. She's like, well, it doesn't hurt to look. He doesn't see the point in looking if they can't afford it. She's like, well, I've never seen the books. I'm not sure how much money you make. And when she asks him these things, he brushes her off. So he just sits there. He says nothing. She asks how much he has saved. He says none because he wasn't planning on buying a house yet. She says that before she moved there, he said he could provide for her financially. And, he's like, that's before I lost all my contracts. So she's like, now you can't provide for me? He's like, it's not that I can't provide for you. I can't buy a house now. He tells us that the way the finances are, it would be impossible for him to buy a house at this stage. And, if Holly finds out that there's no way he can afford to give her what she wants, he's worried, will she be there for him or will she hit the road? He tells her that life has just been hard and they can't buy a house. Later on, we make our way back to them. Holly's talking to her mom, and we actually haven't seen her for a while. I was kind of wondering where she's been, but she's good. She's enjoying the coffee, so she's great. She asks Holly how house hunting went yesterday, and she tells her good, that neither of them like the house, but really it was just to get an idea, when I think Holly really did like the house. So I don't know why she said she didn't. She tells her mom that she's surprised that he said they can't get a house for a long time because they didn't have money. Like, she tells her mom when she met him, the business was doing really well. So she's going to go look at the books and see what's going on, see if she can help. The mom's like, yeah, whip him into shape. And I just want to know, like, what Holly knows about keeping books. Like, I don't know that she has the skills to help, but maybe. She said, after meeting the realtor yesterday, she's still confused about the finances. And she understands, like, setbacks and stuff, but she wants a concept of what's going on. Maybe she could be helpful or resourceful. Wayne, he gets there to pick her up. She's trying to be playful and, like, practice their wedding march, walk back down the aisle. And he's like, I don't have time for this. Let's go. He's defensive. He knows that she's about to be upset and find out everything, right? He tells us if she wants to see these finances, he's going to show her, but he doesn't know how she's going to react. So he's feeling the pressure and the stress. She can, pick up that he's in a bad mood and ask him, and he tells her it's just a lot going on his plate, he has to organize. He's stressed to the max, and he's over there stressing out in the car, and she's just doing her makeup, She does ask him to talk to her about it so that she can help him, and he tells her to be quiet because he needs a moment. He has a phone call to make. Meanwhile, Holly tells us it's frustrating that he keeps everything inside, especially since she made it clear that communication is the most important thing to her in a relationship. She has trusted him to keep her safe. She trusted him to give up everything and, move across the world. And he doesn't want to talk about business or let her help him in any way. And they arrive. They sit to look at the books, and she tells him whatever happens isn't going to change how she feels or sees him or anything. And I'm thinking, don't speak too soon, lady, because you don't know what's coming. He tells her that before he met her, things were going amazing, but just now work hasn't been flowing in, so he feels disappointed in himself. Great, good job. Nice start. She tells him, she's sensitive to his feelings, so when he's upset, she's upset. If he has a bad day, she has a bad day. And, that's all right. She'll spend 1,000 bad days with him, but she's asking him to let her in and to not hide things because she takes it personally when he shuts her out. He tells us that at this time he's thinking to himself, he doesn't want Holly to help him, He feels it'll cause drama in their marriage. He doesn't want her to regret moving because she's afraid he can't financially support her. And, that's just not fair. You can't take that choice from her. She deserves to see all the facts and make a decision from there. He tells her that he doesn't want to put stress on her. But, she would prefer the stress than, like, the stress, take it on with him, as opposed to, like, him shutting her out. He is like, I don't want our marriage to be about business. She's saying she can separate business from pleasure. And, bottom line, she deserves to know about these finances before she commits to him. That's my thought. She didn't say that. I wish she would have. He says that he can't separate them, and, he had problems with his ex-wife because they did business together, and all they did was fight. Then his whole life became business. He's trying to go to sleep, and she's, hounding him about, did he ask people for money? Did he pay things? All of that kind of stuff. She doesn't think she would be that way, but she understands his concern. He doesn't want to take steps back to where he was. And I'm thinking, like, she is not asking you to be a business partner. She's asking you to see your finances and how the money works. Like, before she marries you and moves to a different country permanently, right? Like, I think that's fair. So Holly tells him he needs to let his trust issues go. And he's like, okay, well, I've done something either pretty clever or pretty stupid. She's like, well, what do you mean? You know, he's like, well, it just depends on if it's going to work or not. Then he tells her that he put $40,000 into crypto. And her response is, so that's why we can't have a honeymoon. Like, it just hit her. He says that it is. He tells us that before she moved her life for him, he invested into crypto. And he did that because he was thinking about their financial future when he did it. If it works out, they're going to be set for life. Honestly, I know nothing about this. So I still think it's messed up to just make a huge financial decision like that without consulting your partner, especially when they're moving in with you. But anyways, she's like, you took our honeymoon money and put it into crypto. And he's just like, babe. And she's like, you know, I feel like you should have included me in that decision because she did move her life to be with him after all. Plus, I think she was okay when it was just, you know, the business isn't doing well. Versus, I invested all of our money for our honeymoon and our wedding and our future into crypto. Like, one can understand, okay, work isn't coming in. I get that. Everyone has tough times. But this, it's a little iffy. So she brings up, you know, she bought her dress. She bought the ticket. She spent over like $5,000 getting there. And he's like, I wasn't going to take the honeymoon away. And she immediately says, oh, so we're going on a honeymoon. Well, no, of course not. Not at the moment. And, you know, she just wishes he would have told her. She tells him it's like he doesn't see the severity of it. He hurt someone who loves him and sacrificed for him. So then this guy says, oh, so I've only hurt you? I've never been good to you? Like, that is not the point. And she's like, oh, so you're 100% right. He's like, I didn't say I was right. She's like, well, you're not acknowledging my feelings. You know, defense mode kicks in for Wayne. And he's like, okay, I was wrong. I'm the wrong one. She tells him that that's not a real apology and walks away. As she's leaving, she's like, well, when you get ready to really apologize to me, you can, you know, come talk to me. Then as she's walking out, she's like, I didn't look like an idiot to all my friends and family coming to South Africa for some guy. And that's what gets him. He starts crying. She feels betrayed. You know, he left her in the dark. She thinks he's being deceptive or is deceptive. And it's heartbreaking to her. She took off running out the gate. So I guess she's getting that jog in. Not at night, but, you know, baby steps. He didn't, like, this is my opinion here. He didn't trust her opinion. He knew it was stupid. And she would tell him that it wasn't a good idea. She would rather have a honeymoon and not to do it. So for him, I feel it was better to ask forgiveness than permission until, you know, you're sitting there crying. And she feels like you don't trust her with anything. You know, maybe you wouldn't be so financially stressed out if you had opened up to her and she could have talked you out of it, or, you know, at least had you set some money aside for their future. Like, you knew she didn't want to live in that place. You knew she wanted to go to a gated community. You knew she didn't feel safe. So I don't feel sorry for you and your tears, Wayne. We get to see the rest of this fight next week. So stick around and we can talk about that. I don't mean stick around this video, you know, like my channel. Alright guys, thanks for sticking around this long. If you have made it, please thumbs up and subscribe. And don't forget to comment happy birthday to my little guy. He'll be ecstatic. So, last couple we're going to talk about here is Brandon and Mary. Mary and Brandon have been together for a few days now, and she says she feels more relaxed having him by her side. And, he agreed to be friends with her friends, so she feels like she's overthinking less, and she feels more secure and calm. So these lovebirds are headed off to church. She goes every Sunday, and she would love for Brandon to be Catholic like her. She's not going to force him, but he knows he needs to go to church if he wants to marry her. So she will force him. She's coaching him on how to do things at church. She tells him, basically do what I do. She asks if he's excited, and, he isn't really. And she gets annoyed because it's important to her, And he tells her, well, it wasn't originally important to him, but it is now. So, of course, if it's important to her, it's important to Brandon. He tells us he believes in a higher power, but when he was 7, he stopped going to church because his mom stopped forcing him to go. So this is new to him. They get to the church and they have a seat, and she points out a statue, and she tells him, that's Jesus. And Brandon is aware that that's Jesus. Everybody knows. But I'm glad she was informing him about things, I guess. She tells him they need to behave and not talk because the priest is going to be here any minute. And I was kind of wondering, where's the rest of Mary's family? Because isn't the grandpa Catholic? I suppose he's working on the farm. But, her brother, where's the rest of them? So, out of nowhere, she's like, don't look at girls. And, there isn't even anybody in there. There's, an older lady behind them. And she's like, you can only look at the priest. He says that he's playing it cool, but he is upset because it's already all this pressure to force someone to, adopt your religion. So her telling him, where to look and not to look at other girls is a little bit much. The priest starts his thing, and they sit, and she tells him again not to look at girls, like she told him. I would have walked out if I was Brandon. I couldn't handle this. But he says okay. So he's bored in a new place, and, when you're bored, you look around. Doo-doo-doo. But even if he turns his head a little, she's, on him like a hawk. And he is aware that this is effed up, She keeps telling him to look at her or the priest, and she's just staring at his eyeballs after that. And he says, here we are again with her being insecure and jealous. And they've actually talked about it a lot now. So they've talked about how this wasn't going to happen anymore. He says that being physically controlled about where he can look and who he can speak to is something he doesn't think anyone should have to live with. And I agree. That is abusive, Brandon. I'm glad you could pick that out. They're walking out of church. She tells him again not to look at girls. And he says he knows. And he tells us, it can't be like this forever. I wonder if Brandon is going to stand up for himself. Hopefully. So we see them again, and it's pretty dark, but it's after church. So I don't know if they had to film this 7 times or if they just wandered around, but it was daylight when they went to church. So she asked him how he liked the mass, and he said it was good, but he didn't understand anything being said. He did enjoy the singing. And she tells him she wants him to go every Sunday. And she wants him to believe, that God really exists. And he's like, okay, well, we need to be clear about something. Brandon's willing to learn, but he doesn't want to be forced into submission or told, you have to sit here. Don't look at girls. Don't talk to girls. He's like, I'm not allowed to do that. She's like, well, you can if you want. He tells her it's not about what he wants. He can't go out into public or look at someone without being accused of being a cheater. She says she's not going to accuse him anymore. She was telling him not to look because it was at church. That is bullshit. And then she says, well, do what you want to do. Or why do you want to look at people? Why do you want to look at girls? He's like, it's not about what I want. It's about her trusting him and having faith in him. And she's quiet. And he's like, yeah, think about that. And here comes the tears. Like every time she cries, he immediately stops standing up for himself. So I just hope he can pull it together here. She like is crying. She can't stop herself from being jealous. She's afraid to be left behind. He's like, Mary, I spent 2.5 years with you on the phone, and he never left her for anyone else. And now he's there in person. And, he asked her if she feels like he's the kind of guy that would leave her. And she says, a lot of people promise her that they won't leave, but they do. She tells us again about her parents left her and her brother when they were kids. No messages, no kind of support. And she took that and made it like it was her fault, something about her. That's why they didn't love her. She doesn't like it, but she can't stop. And I'm like, yes, you can. You can have therapy. Anything. I mean, you should start with your abandonment issues. You can get over them. It's hard work, but a lot of people do. He tells her, even if I get baptized and married and have kids, would she finally let go of this fear of abandonment? And she doesn't know. And he says he needs to know. She says, maybe. And he's like, well, it's hard to hold on to a maybe. But at least, she's not saying yes, knowing that she isn't sure if she can do that. So she's honest about that. But he needs something to hold on to. She really starts crying. What do you want me to do, huh? She's crying. But Brandon's not falling for it. And he says he wants her to trust that he can look at and talk to anyone, not just women, but anyone, without leaving her. She's like, well, then find someone else. So she's shutting down. She's defensive. She's like, okay, leave then, even though that's the last thing she wants from him to do is to leave. But she can't, accept that maybe she needs to change this about herself. Like, nobody could live like this. He's like, I will do anything for you. You just have to do this one thing for me. Trust me. He's like, I'm getting the respect of your family. I'm letting you hang out with your friends. He didn't even get mad at her for lying and unplugging the Wi-Fi like he should have. And it's just important to him to be able to go about life without being limited like this. She tells him he doesn't need to ask permission. And he says he isn't asking for permission. He's saying that even in person, he doesn't feel good enough for her trust. She's like, what do you want me to do? Please help me. She starts hyperventilating, crying. She can't breathe. She's upset. And that's where we leave her. Yikes. First, I'm proud of Brandon so far. That might change because this is mid-conflict, as always. I think he handled the conversation well. He was clear about what he wanted. He wasn't asking for anything ridiculous. I would have left that church. Honestly, I can't. If someone sat there and was like, don't look at men. Don't look at men. I'd be like, excuse me. Everybody, half the people in here are men. Like, I'm sorry I had to sneeze and my eyes went that way. So that was too much. I also have issues with people who don't try to fix things like their trauma, things that have hurt them, and then they use it just as an excuse and accept that that's their behavior, and they never try to fix it so that their life can be better, because she's the one suffering the most because she has to feel this way about herself and the people that she loves. So it's like fixing it might be hard, but living this way is hard. And if you take steps towards therapy or towards to fixing your issues, that's one step closer to it being less hard. If you just sit there like this and you're jealous and insecurity and abandonment issue having self, nothing's going to get better. It's just going to get worse and more lonely. So that's my rant for that. I'm interested to see what happens. I actually think this new episode's on tonight, so I should have that on here in a few days, a couple days if I'm lucky. Next up, I'm going to be having before the 90 days. I saw that Razvan is just crying. I feel real bad for him. So we'll talk about that in that video. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for liking and subscribing and hanging out with me. And please let me know what you thought about this episode down below. And, don't forget to take deep breaths and smile at strangers. And unless you're Brandon, don't smile at nobody if you're Brandon. But a smile could really help someone's day. Or just tell them that you like their hair or their makeup. Anything. Spread some kindness out there. So, have a good day, everyone. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.